All right, guys, welcome to Wide Awake News Radio. I'm your host, Charlie McGrath. It is the 6th day of August, Tuesday. We're broadcasting, of course, on the Rinse Radio Network, as well as Justin TV, as well as I believe we're sending still a stream to Next News Network. If you're listening and not one of the folks in chat room right now and you want to join them, go to wideawakenews.com, click on the microphone. That'll take you into the chat. And tonight we have back on, after quite a little spell, we haven't had him on for a couple months, Freeman. Burt is joining us from Colorado, and I'm going to bring him on here in just a second. A lot of topics that I want to cover. I know Burt is working his best to try to enlighten us to this legal system that dominates our everyday life. I am sitting here. I just put out a video on the tool that terror has become, and the gullibility of my fellow Americans just to drink it down like so much Kool-Aid. And I want to get into that a little bit, but let me bring on Burt first. Burt, welcome back to the program. Great to have you back on here. How have you been?
Oh, great. Well, thank you very much for having me on. It's always an honor and a pleasure to join such high esteemed company.
As the grand Oompa Loompa, that is I.
You got it.
If you guys haven't watched that video I just posted, I think about 50 people have watched it, you'll get a kick out of it because my camera settings were off and I was rushing to get through it, and I am the grand Oompa Loompa because I'm as orange as a pumpkin in that one, so I hope you get to enjoy me ranting a little bit and have that Oompa Loompa look. Burt, I told you a little bit before the program, I'm sitting here looking at the headlines of we're going to close 19 embassies, all these terror alerts that are, dominating our headlines right now. And I'm sitting here just mesmerized by this bull, this complete and utter crap that we've been sold as a people for so long. And it's very, very frustrating to sit here and see people's fear get ginned up because somebody heard something over some wiretap or this wiretap, or somebody overheard a key affiliate with this group. And in reality, when you take this information in totality and you compare it with what we're doing, what we say we're trying to do and what we actually do, it literally makes me sick because I'm sitting here listening to their senior members of Al-Qaeda have been overheard saying there's going to be this attack and that attack, and so we all need to be afraid. When in reality, this is nothing more than we're trying to prevent another Benghazi-type incident or trying to look like we're garnering valuable intelligence off of wiretapping the world. But the truth is, the real terror is happening not in Syria or in Libya. I mean, these nations are destabilized in a large part due to the American taxpayer. Like it or not, we backed all of these so-called freedom fighters that we now know are the same groups that we've been fighting for so long. But the true terror is happening right here in our very own country. I posted a story today about Viper teams. I'm going to just take this and then bring Burt's, get his take on this. And Burt, I know this isn't your area of expertise, but I'm sure that you've heard about this. In 2008, right, we had the TSA come out of 9/11, this Transportation Security Administration that has 56,000 blue shirts, 56,000 people who have no legal authority over you whatsoever, who cannot enforce any law upon you, yet we are being immersed in this notion that we need to stand in line like cattle, capitulate to their will, and do exactly what they say, or we're going to face the full force of tyrannical government. 56,000 of them. And in 2008, there was 10 teams that were Viper teams. These are teams that worked outside of airports, that would go to bus stations, train stations, and conduct these illegal, unconstitutional searches of individuals. Well, from 2008, the 10 has grown to nearly 40. Their budget has exploded to $100 million a year. $100 million a year. These 37 teams get to go run around the country. In 2011, they were in Savannah, Georgia, harassing people on trains. In 2012, they were in Houston on the public transit system, harassing people on buses. And at the end of the day, not one terrorist activity was thwarted. And in fact, some people end up being arrested, but just for minor charges that were based either in the city or county level, nothing to do with terror, just a complete destruction of your freedom. And we're just being constantly immersed in this notion that if we didn't do anything wrong, we have nothing to fear. And it's the same principle, Burt, that is the checkpoints you have there in Colorado, the traffic cam lights you have there in Colorado. This notion that if you don't do anything wrong, you have nothing to fear. But the truth is, there's a lot to fear when we see this kind of Gestapo tactics popping up around the country. Am I right?
You're mostly right.
Okay, where am I mostly? How am I partially wrong? If I'm mostly right, I must be partially wrong.
Well, every time we get started, I always have to correct you on a couple of key words when you.
I didn't say citizen or resident, did I?
No,
I said you're in Colorado.
No, you said the war that we are fighting. Who's we?
Well, that's my point. See, and I say it that way on purpose. It is to show people. And you'll probably correct this as not being accurate, but I think the point of me saying, look, right now we're about to arm Al-Qaeda and al-Nusra inside of Syria so we can prosecute a war against their government, Assad, so we can get Assad out of there. But we are doing this, and it is happening in our name. We are killing people on a daily basis around this planet. And if it's happening under the guise of the United States, under the umbrella of the United States, then the world sees it as being done in our name. Now, I know you're going to correct me, so go ahead.
No, that's actually correct there. And that's the point that needs to be understood by most people, is that they want you to believe that we or the government is you. And the truth is that it's not. Now, this is a thought that would be very interesting for people to contemplate. What would happen if all the men or women who live in the supposedly free 50 states would cease to be part of the so-called United States military? Would the military, in fact, disappear? It would not, because they would go and probably hire Chinese.
Yeah. Well, that's a good point. In 2003 invasion of Iraq, to present, could not be done. I mean, that's already happened, Burt, in one respect, because it couldn't have been done without the private contractors, the thousands and thousands of private these mercenaries that were hired in order to take up a lot of the role of the military. So you're 100% right. They could walk away tomorrow, and we would just steal from the future to buy private armies now.
Yeah, well, because the United States, remember, the United States, as far as the District of Columbia is concerned, it's a foreign location. It's a foreign entity, foreign to the free states. So being foreign, it can pretty much do whatever it wants. And then you also use the term individual. According to them, an individual, remember, it's an employee. Mm-hmm. It's an officer. So it's actually not unconstitutional to submit individuals to pat-downs or any type of thing like that, because if those are regulations that are federal, they are expected to abide by those regulations. No different than if you worked at Walmart and at the end of your shift, it was required that you be patted down to make sure that you're not stealing any products. And I actually worked at a grocery store one time where they wanted to exercise that supposedly regulation on me, and of course, I didn't allow
right.
it.
And, I can imagine how that went over with Freeman Burt.
Yeah. But so I stood by while I watched everybody else get patted down, and the manager comes whining and saying, well, you got to do this, you got to do that. I said, no, I don't. You accused me first of stealing something, and then I'll let you pat me down. And if you don't find anything on me, guess what? I'm going to sue you for falsely accusing me. So the ball is on you.
I want to hear how that ended. We're going to take a break, our first break. We're going to be back with Freeman Burt and more Wide Awake News Radio. Please hang tight. Welcome back to Wide Awake News Radio. Charlie McGrath joined by Freeman Burt on this 6th day of August, Tuesday. And we were talking before the break about a job you had where they were searching people to make sure, what was a grocery store, making sure they weren't ripping off steaks or something. And
pork chops.
Pork chops. Well, you know what? That's almost as good as gold these days. But and you're drawing a comparison to working in a job where they tell you they're going to do this. And these Viper search teams that are now nearly 40 of them, $100 million budget, going around and stopping people randomly. Getting on a bus, okay, we're gonna check your bags, we're gonna pat you down, we're gonna ask you a bunch of questions, and you're drawing the comparison between that and a private job.
Yeah, well, it's I mean, the one thing that people need to keep in mind is that, especially if you work for a corporation, the very fact that you work for a corporation means that you're working for an agent of the body politic of the state. Okay, and that's why I tell people, do not incorporate your business, because when you incorporate your business, you basically are giving it away. Okay, it now becomes a business of the state, and you're managing it for the state. That's why they can tax you, and that's why they can tell you what to do with your employees, because the term employee basically means an individual of the state. So only state agencies have employees. So when you work for a corporation and you're an employee and your employer is the employer, well, those are all legal terms of the United States. So they're all agents. So as agents of the state, they can try to dictate to you to do X, Y, Z. And if you're not acting within that capacity, they cannot even attempt to dictate you do any of those things. But if they pretend that you're a horse and they try to put the saddle on you and you don't complain, well, guess what? Somebody's going to ride you, probably with sharp spurs. So we have to make the distinction about who we are, and then not allow them to persuade you otherwise. And that's what I'm finding out that is so critical when you go to court, is you knowing who you are and knowing who they are trying to get you to be, and don't let them. Draw the line in the sand and don't let them cross it. And if they're going to drag you across the line, well, they'll have to drag you, but they're not going to do it with your consent.
How does this apply to, and I know we can get into, the definitions they use in court, and how you get roped into the system. And once you're roped into it, you're basically a cog. But drawing this connection to like these Viper teams. Now, I know you're someone who's dealt to the extreme with TSA, but if you're in Denver and all of a sudden it's probably happened where they've had checkpoints that are TSA Viper team rolling through, and they want to stop and search and check your person or your belongings. At that point, this isn't court. This is at that moment. What are you doing in order to thwart that?
You say you don't consent. If you proceed, I will consider it trespass, and I'll have lawful cause to sue you. I need your name and badge.
All right.
I mean,
Go ahead.
Well, that's basically what my friend did when he was going with his, with his son through the Airbus station, and when he kept looking at people's tags and writing their names down and badge numbers, they were all getting extremely nervous, because I think TSA people now are being instructed about the truth that each and every one of them, when they operate outside of their capacity, they're actually acting personally, and TSA cannot protect them if they're sued personally.
This is go ahead and tell that story. This is a friend of yours who traveled with his young son. Yeah,
and his son is actually 12, so it's right on that borderline that you were talking about. But anyway, he got to the Airbus station kind of in the evening when most of the lines, so-called security lines, are closed, and he already knew that they have a metal line open, because I tell that to people all the time, and I don't remember where I read it, But anyway, I just recently had my family also go out of the country, and they all went, my wife and my children, they all went through the metal detector, and nobody was touched by any TSA molester. And so there was only 3 lines open in the entire Airbus station, and there was no metal detector lines open. So my friend went up to the first guy and he says, yes, I need you to open up a metal detector line because I see you don't have one open. And of course, the first response is, oh, you don't tell us what to do, we're TSA. So he's like, he doesn't argue, he's very calm. He just looked at the guy's badge and started writing down his name. He called another guy, third guy, fourth guy. When the fourth supervisor got there or whatever, he explained to him the situation. He says, no, neither my son nor I are going to go through the body scanner, and we're not. He said, oh, well, you can opt out. He said, no, we're not going to opt out either. We want to go through a metal detector and nothing else. So the guy says, oh, well, actually, yeah, there's a, here, well, you can go through this line right over here. And he opened it up, and there was a metal detector, and he went through. No problem. On the way back, he went to Alaska, he told the people there the same thing. No problem. They opened up a line for him, and he went right through.
Yeah.
So it's all about standing up for your rights. And then I have another friend that's an adult. He had no children with him, and he told them the same thing. He didn't consent to either being patted down or anything, and then they discussed the location of his privates for 45 minutes. But then he went through.
We're going to be back with Freeman Burt, and we talked a little bit about that story in the last break, but I want to get that out there when we come back. We'll be back with Freeman Burt and more Wide Awake News Radio. Hang tight. All right, welcome back to Wide Awake News Radio. Charlie McGrath joined by Freeman Burt on the 6th day of August. Have I told you it's the 6th day of August yet? Because it is, Tuesday. And we continue the conversation. And I was saying, Burt, before we went into break, that or when we went into break, I know that if you're traveling with, and this is from talking to TSA, if you're traveling with a 12-year-old, your party has, by their own rules, has to be offered a metal detector rather than the naked body scanner or the groping. I didn't know, and you were about to tell a story of a friend of yours who did this and would not go through the naked body scanner, but yet wouldn't opt for a pat down either. Is that accurate?
That's correct. And they went ahead and had a discussion about where his privates were, and they're saying, well, we're gonna go up your leg, and basically saying the whole discussion of how the pat down was going on sounded like one of those 900 phone calls, and he told the guy, he says, oh, so you're gonna go up my leg, and then the guy says, yeah, to where my hand is blocked by your torso. And he says, well, that's not my torso down there. There's something else down there that's not my torso.
Burt, what I want to know is, did he offer to buy him dinner first?
I think he offered to put on lipstick or something. And so he says this discussion went on for about 45 minutes. And he says, no, if you go up there, you're going to be, in fact, touching my privates, and I don't consent to any such thing. And anyway, after like 45 minutes or an hour and talking to the supervisor there, they said, well, you've been screened, sir. And he went through. Because in fact, he had been screened. He went through the metal detector, and then his luggage was screened. So he was screened. Yeah. All this other nonsense is beyond the definition of screening. I mean, you have to look up the definition of screening, what it really means.
Well, I understand that. The problem I think most travelers have is they don't have 45 minutes. They're not planning 45 minutes or an hour, or in some cases, like in your instance, you're one of the reasons we originally brought you, when I originally heard your story of how you confronted TSA in Denver. I mean, most people are not set up or have can afford the time to go to that extent, and they just end up, doing one pick your poison. Maybe they're not going through the naked body scanner, but they're going through a pat down. It's the part that's disgusting is that we're at that point. We're at that point where we're willing to well, I shouldn't say willing. We're at a point where we have to, want for a better term, fight it at that end. It should have never got to that point, and it continues to get worse. I mean, it's like I said earlier. It's unfortunate that as soon as somebody's willing to stand up and realize the truth and stand up for themselves, there is 15 other things that are happening on the propaganda front to make us see the next wave of freedom destruction legislation that's coming our way. When you look back, and I said this to you in a minute ago, since the last time you've been on the program, look at the things that have happened to our nation. We've sat back and been told, regardless if you think Snowden was a plant or if you think it was a WikiLeaks setup or whatever the case was. Look, at the end of the day, the information came out that you were being spied on, surveilled on at every single turn. And regardless if it was put out there purposefully so they could immerse you suddenly into this reality or not, the truth is, that we're sitting here talking about what are we saying to the blue shirts, but in reality, the power elite that are truly dominating this nation and this planet are 15 steps ahead of that. They're already to the point of, they're worried about what kind of keystrokes you're going to be putting into your Google search and having a Joint Terrorism Task Force show up at your door. So I mean, it seems like every step we take forward, there's 10 steps back, or I should say that these power junkies are 10 steps ahead. Burt.
Yeah, well, but then again, we follow the same logic that you're saying, 2 years ago when this thing I did with TSA. People were putting out tons of videos of children being molested by TSA. You don't see that anymore. Why? Because they're not doing it anymore. Because they realized that there's a lot of people opposing to it. That's why they quit doing it. They didn't do it because they changed their policies or their regulations or whatever. They did it because people opposed. I mean, there are people standing up to the FDA in California by the bunch because the FDA is trying to prevent people from, trading their milk from their cows, trading their vegetables, blah, 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 because they want you to use their Federal Reserve notes, right? So all you need is enough people to stand up, and you don't need that many. I guess I'll tell you this now. I'm in the process of trying to set up something to allow 100 people in each county to come together that want to change their county. So that's all we need. It's like 100 people in each county, and those 100 people can literally change the county if they want to. Because there are certain things that have to happen that people need to do and step forward, and those two things are very important. One is they're trying to do away with the elected sheriffs all across the country, and they're doing away with elected court clerks, and they're merging the court clerk with the public records clerk. Those are from two different branches, judicial and executive. They're merging them together, which is actually unconstitutional, but they're doing that to prevent you from having access to the courts and to the public records. They've done that in Florida and in California. And it happened right under the noses of the people.
Well, it could happen under the nose of me, and I wouldn't understand. That's why I want you to explain that a little bit more.
Well, in court, the most important officer is actually the court clerk. The court clerk is the one that takes your paper in and decides basically what's going to happen to your papers as you enter your action. And if you don't have a court clerk, then your paperwork pretty much goes directly to a secretary of the judge. And now you have no neutral party to address your paperwork. That's what the court clerk is supposed to be. And if the court clerk is elected, then she's working as an officer of the people, not of the court. That's the huge difference. If you have a court clerk that's working for the judges, then obviously she's not working for you.
So we see in election time, we see the clerk of the court on the ballots, and their job. Break that job down a little bit.
Well, when you have when you go to court, you see the court building. Mm-hmm. And then you go inside, and then you have the court clerk. The court clerk is responsible for the building and for everything that goes on inside of that court. Now, when you step beyond the court clerk, you go inside a courtroom. And inside that courtroom, you're going to have a tribunal and the litigants. That is, in fact, the court. That is a court. You cannot have a court without litigants, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what happens is, if you don't have a true court clerk, and for example, you sue a TSA agent, you bring your suit and you lay it at the desk of the court clerk. The court clerk will hold on to that case. Okay, it's not really a case. It's just a complaint on your part. Will hold on to it for 21 to 30 days to allow the other side to respond to it. And if they don't respond to it, then you get what? A default judgment, right? But what they're doing now is, without the court clerk, the clerks immediately pass your paperwork to the judge. The judge puts a case number on it, even though it's in fact not a case, because the other side has not responded. It becomes a case when the other side responds. Then it becomes a case. And then they move it immediately to the judge. And then the judge begins to analyze your paperwork as though he was the litigant. That's wrong. That's not how it's supposed to work. And they're doing all of these things right under.
And what do they in California and Florida? What did they replace the clerk with? With the elected clerk of the court?
Well, they replaced the court clerk with another officer that acts as the records clerk, which is the public records. Like, if you're going to go file, like you sell a piece of property and you want to record the paperwork for that, you would go to the public records office. Mm-hmm. Well, they're merging that office with the court clerk. Those are two different offices. The court is one thing, that's judicial. The records is executive. It's a different branch. You cannot merge the two.
All right, who is behind the push to merge these two? Is it these individual states, or is it some kind of federal mandate? And we get a break coming here. We can answer this after the break. We'll be back with Freeman, Burt, and more Wide Awake News Radio in just a minute. Hang tight. All right, final segment of Wide Awake News Radio tonight. Please tune in tomorrow for Woody O'Brien on his hour program, and check out his website. I want to get some folks going over there, because he's working his tail off every Wednesday at 6 o'clock West, 9 o'clock East, to bring you some very interesting programming. So stop in, check it out, visit his website, Woody O'Brien, on Wide Awake News Radio every Wednesday night. And on this final segment, there's two things I want to cover. One is what you just said before we went into break, your approach you're taking to dealing with these individuals who are given this authority that they do not possess constitutionally, how you're becoming more non-confrontational. But I also want you to touch on, in this last 15 minutes, this plan you're working on, because I haven't heard of this before, this 100-person per county plan to take counties back. So let's start with that and then get into the confrontational portion.
Yeah, and here's where the 100 becomes really critical. I mean, I don't know if people have ever been to a councilman meeting, or basically any kind of a meeting in their county where they're discussing things that are going to happen in the county. How many people usually show up for these meetings?
Not very many.
Not very many, like a couple of dozen or 3 dozens at the most.
Right.
So if you had 100 people that all are of the same mindset, they can take over every single meeting in the county. Okay? You can have 100 people send letters constantly to these officials telling them, we are going to do this, we are going to do that. We are going to put referendums on the next ballot to reinstate the sheriff, to reinstate the public records, to reinstate the court clerk. 100 people can get that done. It's all doable. But the problem is that everybody sits on their hands.
Yeah, unless it's something sensational, and then you'll have a packed room, but that's very, very rare in these.
Yeah. So right now, because of the fact that more people are awakening, I mean, I'm really excited about the future. I mean, my son is 8 years old, and I have high hopes that by the time he's 18, there's going to be a great improvement in this country by then, because I'm because I'm seeing it. I'm seeing it in courts. I'm seeing more court people that work in court, being more responsive to what we're trying to do as far as being willing to help. I'm getting feedback from cops that are seeing that are happy to see people like myself and others actually standing up for the truth, because there's a lot of people in this so-called government that want to see the change. They know that there's horrible things happening, corruption, etc., but they themselves can't do anything. And if you come along with the right spirit, with the right action, they will do what they can from the inside to help you. And that's why we always want to be friendly with people that we're dealing with, and then not to be confrontational, because my approach now is I say, well, I'm going to assume that you, Charlie, are working in true honor. So therefore, I'm sure what you're saying is correct. Therefore, I'm sure that there's a law, there's a principle, there's a statute, there's a constitutional section that backs up what you're saying. And I'm sure you have no problem providing me with that.
It's pretty non-confrontational. Yeah, I saw what you did there.
Yeah. And you keep them in honor.
Sure, bro. And you told me a story once where it wasn't. I don't think it was you personally. Maybe I'm wrong in this, but it was showing your ID. First of all, somebody comes up behind you with their emergency lights on, and you're when they come to your window, you're like, "Where's the emergency?" Or you have 911 on the phone, saying, "Hey, here, I'm trying to help you. Apparently, there's an emergency. I want to help you. Here's a 911." That's pretty non-confrontational, or do you think that's even beyond what you should do?
No, well, that's something that you could do, but I also tell people that the roadside is not the place to make your stand about your right, because you may be dealing with a cop that's totally eager to pull that trigger.
Right.
So that's not the place.
So where's your situation where you say, "I'm sure you're working in honor, and I'm sure you're right. Provide me with something. I'm sure you have no problem." Where are you saying that at? That
mainly when you're dealing with government officials that are not so eager to pull a gun and shoot you with.
Right.
Okay. But you can pull it in any place, but especially in court, especially in governmental offices, because they operate under assumptions, and assumptions are not legal or lawful. But if you don't know the difference between an assumption and a fact, well, then I guess you're kind of SOL.
Yeah, no doubt.
And if you don't know the fact, and they do, then you say, well, surely you have no problem showing that to me. Now, the common response that you're going to get from government people is, "Oh, I can't give you legal advice." And legal advice is not you telling me the statute under which you're operating. That's not legal advice. In fact, they're compelled to tell you the rule or regulation that they're exercising at that moment. That's not legal advice.
And Burt, that makes sense to me. I'm just having a tough time putting this into perspective of in what scenario. Is this a parking ticket? Is this somebody searched my car illegally? Is a cop searched my vehicle, or I feel that he infringed upon my rights somehow? What would be an application on this? Because
well, let me give you an application.
All right.
You are walking down the street. You're just walking down the sidewalk, and somebody stops you and they say, "You look like a suspect.
Right.
Get up against the wall, and I am going to search you." That can happen, right?
Absolutely.
And you say, "Well, I don't know what you're talking about, but I do not consent. And unless you have probable cause, tangible, real probable cause, I'm not consenting to you touching me." So at that point, the only thing that he or she can do is just kind of detain you, right, without you moving until that evidence is either provided or not provided. But at the same time, you can tell them, if you don't come up with the tangible evidence, I will come after you for false arrest. And you have the right to do that.
Yeah, I agree with that, and we've seen cases where that's actually come to pass, where people have said that, in some cases like a checkpoint, and asserted their rights and have either been beat down or let go, one or the other. But they've in these cases that at least have become popular or at least have been went viral on the internet, these guys have made their point and stood up for themselves, and in some cases they've got these officers in trouble for violating their rights. But look, this is again, I want to know, and I want to have some of the same optimism you have for the future, right? Because my kid's in that same age group, and I want to have optimism for what he's going to be facing. But every time I get on a computer or look at news or look at what's coming next, it isn't. Am I just being pessimistic here? I'm seeing a further decline in freedom, not an emergence. I'm seeing more people wake up. I agree with you, but this realization isn't coming because of victories that they're winning. They're coming to the awakening because of a tyrannical government that keeps forcing more and more tyrannical means onto the people. Am I being too pessimistic?
Well, a little bit. I mean, it's obvious that TSA have taken a step back, and they don't want to put their hands on children.
Right.
That's not accidental. That's because people have been standing up to TSA. And they're making a lot of changes. I mean, I've seen people in wheelchairs go through without being molested like they were being molested before. All this is they're testing the ground to see how far we will allow them to go. So when they're doing their testing, that should be a clue that, hey, we need to jump on their toes and let them know, no, you can't come across here. Ban, smash a couple of toes. How do you smash a couple of toes? By suing a few of those people personally. And then they'll back off. Because no one in the so-called government can actually be protected by the government if they are stepping outside of their office, because then they're acting personally. That's just a fact. Yeah. And the mistake that people do, of course, always hiring an attorney. The attorney will take your case and then sue that individual in his official capacity to purposely screw your case.
All right, before we go, I do want to ask you one other thing here real quick, because it's happened since the last time you've been on. There was a push, and dang it, I don't have it off the top of my head here, a county in Colorado who was it was a county that was looking at plans of secession.
Yeah, I know.
What was that about?
Weld County. And I haven't had a chance to get involved in it, but I
think it was water rights, or was it water rights issue there? Or
I don't remember what it was, but it's stupid propaganda. They can't do that.
See, my hope still lies in states' rights. I mean, that's where I am. I hold out hope for freedom in our country, and if I'm looking to a more positive future, it is that states start to assert their sovereignty.
Yeah, but see, there's two states. There's the states of the United States, and then there are the free states. That's where people are confused.
Apparently so.
We have to get into that in more detail later, but that's.
I think we can do it in 45 seconds.
Well, in 45 seconds, if you look at the United States, mm-hmm. or the states of the United States, what states are they talking about? When you talk about the state of Colorado or the state of Wyoming or whatever, just that expression alone should kind of give you a hint. You're talking about the state of Colorado. That means the state that belongs to Colorado. How can a state belong to Colorado? Now, what if you say Colorado State? Now, what are you saying?
Wrap it up, Burt. I do. Colorado State. Colorado State University.
Right.
Freeman,
so there are differences in the terminology.
I know, and you're a wordsmith. You come on here and break it down for us. Freeman, Burt, thank you very much for coming on, and I appreciate it. His website is onlyfreeman.com, onlyfreeman.com, and his YouTube channel is Do Not Consent 83 on YouTube. Burt, did you want me to give your email address out? Why'd you give that to me?
Well, it's on my YouTube. Yeah, I mean, in case someone wants to contact me, especially about this county thing.
All right, if you want to contact Burt about his county plan, Do not consent 83 at yahoo.com is his email address. Burt, thank you very much for coming on. I appreciate it.
All right, buddy. Thanks. Take care.
You bet. Enjoy the rest of your dinner. Guys, enjoy Jeff because he is coming up next. And don't forget tomorrow night to get on here and support Woody O'Brien as he hosts Wide Awake News Radio. Again, every Wednesday, 6 p.m. West, 9 p.m. East. Gary Hendershot, thank you very much for producing tonight's program. And I will see you guys next Tuesday. Have a good night. Peace.